Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to take a deep breath for a second, because what we're about to talk about isn't just relationship advice. It's the moment your entire nervous system finally realizes, I am not here to chase someone who is terrified of being loved. You were never needy. You were never broken, dramatic, or too much. You were the one in the relationship who actually cared whether it lived or died. That's what nobody told you. While you were lying awake at night wondering what you did wrong, replaying conversations, second-guessing your tone, apologizing for existing, you weren't being irrational. You were doing the job of two people. You were the emotional engine, the heartbeat, the one who kept the connection from flatlining while the other person floated in and out as it suited them, safely protected behind their emotional walls. When you asked, "Can we talk?" it wasn't a demand, it was oxygen for a relationship that was suffocating. When you texted first, called to check in, tried to understand their moods, you weren't chasing a fantasy. You were trying to keep something real alive. Think about how many times you sensed the distance before they even admitted it. They went quiet. Their replies got shorter. Their energy changed. They pretended everything was fine, but your body felt the truth. Your chest tightened, your stomach dropped, your brain went into overdrive searching for what you did wrong. You asked if they were okay. You asked if something had shifted. You offered them space, but also reminded them you were there. That's not neediness. That's emotional attunement. You had the courage to look at what was happening, to name the tension, to say, something feels off. While they buried their discomfort and distraction, you faced yours head on. You were willing to feel for two people because they had never learned how to feel for themselves. Every time there was a misunderstanding, who reached out first? You. Every time there was silence after an argument, who broke it? You. Every time they stonewalled down or disappeared into work, friends, hobbies, or their phone, who carried the weight of reconnection? You. You crafted the long messages, trying to be logical and kind at the same time. You explained your perspective and their perspective. You soothed their triggers even while yours were raging. You walked on eggshells around their moods and called it love. You spent hours drafting texts you never sent, editing yourself down so you wouldn't sound clingy. You apologized for your reaction, even when it came from very real hurt. That was emotional labor, and you were doing it constantly, often with no acknowledgement and no reciprocity. The avoidant got to stay in a place of emotional control precisely because you kept doing that work. They got to be the one who pulled away, who dodged hard conversations, who said, I don't know what I want, while still benefiting from your tenderness, your loyalty, your constant availability. They could criticize the relationship and still know you'd show up tomorrow. They could say, you're too sensitive, you're overthinking, and deep down trust that you'd keep overthinking for the both of you, because that's how you loved. Distance was their safety mechanism, but the only reason they could use it so freely was because you were always compensating for it. You filled every gap they left. You turned their half investment into something that looked like a full relationship. You have to see how powerful that is. People called you needy because they were uncomfortable with how deeply you feel. But your depth is why anything meaningful ever happened between you two. You initiated the conversations that actually brought you closer. You suggested spending quality time. You asked the questions that cracked open truth, even when it hurt. You were the one saying, where are we going? What do we want? How can we make this better? Without you, the relationship would have drifted into nothing long before. Your so-called neediness was actually your unwillingness to accept shallow, half-hearted connection. You wanted real intimacy, real effort, real presence. That is not a flaw. That is an advanced emotional skill most people never master. You didn't just feel your own emotions, you unconsciously carried theirs too. When they were overwhelmed, you softened. When they were distant, you leaned in. When they messed up, you understood their trauma, their childhood, their fear of commitment. You defended them to your friends. You explained away their patterns because you could see the wounded person underneath their behavior. Meanwhile, who was holding your wounded parts? Who was saying, let me carry your fear for a while, Almost no one. You were the safe harbor, the emotional translator, the therapist, the caretaker, the rescuer. And somewhere along the line, you started believing that this was your role in love. To be the one who always understands, always forgives, always tries harder. The truth is, there was nothing wrong with wanting reassurance, clarity, consistency, or effort. Those are the basic nutrients of a healthy relationship, not excessive demands. Wanting them doesn't make you needy. Giving them for free to someone who barely shows up is what drains you. Your body wasn't overreacting. It was responding to starvation. Anxious attachment is what happens when a sensitive, loving system keeps getting mixed signals: come closer, go away, I love you, don't suffocate me, I need you. But not like that. You weren't malfunctioning. You were adapting to someone who could not, or would not, meet you at your level of emotional presence. You tried to carry both ends of the rope, and you blamed yourself when it slipped. So when you look back and judge yourself for staying too long, texting too much, crying too hard, I want you to reframe it. That wasn't desperation. That was devotion misdirected. You were the emotional engine, the heart that refused to flatline, even while the avoidant kept one foot in and one foot out. You kept trying because that's who you are, a lover who doesn't quit easily, a soul that fights for connection. And one day, when you give that same energy to someone who can actually hold it with you, you will finally see it for what it always was, not neediness, but greatness. There is a moment in this entire painful dance that almost feels unreal when it happens. It doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't come with a big dramatic fight. It usually arrives in quiet, in a room where you're exhausted from crying, or on a random Tuesday when your heart finally whispers, I can't keep doing this. That's the moment the anxious one emotionally walks away. Maybe you're still technically there for a little while, but something inside you shifts. You stop begging. You stop bargaining. You stop designing strategies to win the love of someone who keeps running from it. Outwardly, it looks like silence. Inwardly, it is an emotional revolution. And it's in that silence that avoidance nightmare truly begins. Because for so long, the avoidant was used to the pattern. They knew you would text after a fight. They knew you would chase after their withdrawal. They knew that if they ignored, minimized, or disappeared for a bit, you would collapse the distance. You would send the long explanations, the heartfelt messages, the I'm sorry if I texts, even when you didn't do anything wrong. They depended on your anxiety without ever naming it. It allowed them to stay in control while still having access to the comfort of knowing that you were there. They had space, and they had you. Safe distance with emotional supply attached to it. Then suddenly, you stop playing that role. You don't send the follow-up paragraph. You don't chase their one-word replies with 5 pages of emotional clarity. You don't chase them up the mountain of their own avoidance. You sit down. You breathe. You choose yourself. Maybe you simply go quiet. Maybe you set a boundary. Maybe you leave the conversation or the relationship without the usual performance of trying to convince them that you are worth staying for. To them, this isn't just strange. On a nervous system level, it's alarming. Their subconscious had built a script. No matter how far I pull back, they will come back to me. When that script breaks, fear starts to seep in. At first, many avoidants feel a wave of relief. This is important to understand so you don't romanticize their first reaction. Initially, they tell themselves, good. Finally, the pressure is gone. I knew this wasn't right. I knew they needed too much. They sink into distractions. They overwork, they scroll, they flirt with someone new. They convince themselves they're better off. But relief that is built on avoidance is thin. It doesn't last. Because underneath the story, they tell themselves, I escaped something suffocating. Is a truth they don't want to sit with. They lost someone who showed up. It's in the quiet days when nobody is chasing them that the discomfort starts. They open their phone at a time when they're used to seeing your name. Nothing. They post something half, hoping you'll react, even if they'd never admit that out loud. Silence. They scroll through old chats and feel that eerie difference between who you were then and who you are now. You are no longer orbiting them. Your energy is no longer wrapped around their moods. And the power they used to feel by pulling away starts to crumble, because distance only feels powerful when someone is trying to close it. This is where the emotional nightmare truly begins for the avoidant. Not because you're punishing them, but because your absence exposes their internal reality. They start to experience some of what you lived with for months or years. They feel the uncertainty. They feel the, did I mess this up? They feel the ache of not knowing where they stand with someone they once assumed would always be there. They replay moments they dismissed, the way your voice shook when you asked if they cared, the text you sent at 2 a.m., the day you said, "This is breaking me," and they brushed it off as drama. Those memories aren't background noise anymore. They sting. The mind of an avoidant under pressure doesn't calmly process emotion. It scrambles. It jumps between defensiveness and doubt. One moment they're telling themselves they were overreacting anyway. And the next moment they're thinking, what if I pushed away the one person who truly saw me? That internal war between pride and regret is the nightmare. For the first time, there is no anxious partner to soothe it, explain it, or take responsibility for it. The avoidant has to sit in a room with their own choices. Silence for them used to be a weapon. It was a way to create distance, reset control, avoid vulnerability. Now that same silence becomes a mirror. It reflects back the reality that they did so little to nurture the connection. It shows them how much of the relationship's aliveness came from you. It confronts them with the truth that love cannot be sustained by one person's effort and another person's fear. You used to be the cushion that protected them from facing their own capacity to hurt people. When you step back, they don't have that protection anymore. And here's the powerful part for you to understand. You did not create their nightmare. You simply stopped cushioning it. You stopped absorbing all the discomfort so they could stay comfortable in their distance. When you calmly, quietly walk away, not to manipulate, not to make them chase, but to return to yourself, you shift the entire dynamic. Their safety used to be built on the assumption that you would always be available. When that assumption dies, they are left alone with the emptiness they feared all along. And whether they grow from it or run from it is their path to choose. But make no mistake, the moment you stop chasing is the exact moment their illusion of control begins to fall apart. What if I told you that the very thing you've been shamed for, your neediness, your emotions, your questions, your longing, is not what actually scares the avoidant? It's not your late night texts or your "we need to talk" conversations that truly shake them. What terrifies them far more is the moment you finally see the pattern clearly and realize you can walk away. As long as you're spinning in anxiety, over-analyzing, over-apologizing, over-giving, they feel strangely safe. Your anxiety keeps you tethered to them. It makes you predictable. They know that no matter how far they push you, you will twist yourself into new shapes to make it work. But the second your eyes open and you say, "Wait, I don't deserve this," that's when you become powerful. And that's what they fear losing control over. Think about it. When you were in the thick of it, feeling like you were drowning, how many times did you beg for reassurance, clarity, time, effort? They might have rolled their eyes, minimized your feelings, or accused you of being too sensitive. They made your legitimate needs sound like a character defect. But did they leave? No. They stayed. Why? Because even though they complained, your neediness served them. It kept the spotlight off their own emotional avoidance. As long as you were busy believing you were the problem, they never had to look in the mirror and ask, "Why am I so uncomfortable with real intimacy?" Your self-blame was their shield. Your desperation kept the story alive that you were always the one reaching, while they just reacted. Underneath, though, avoidance is not emotional invincibility. It's emotion of fear dressed up as independence. They fear being seen, being depended on, being responsible for someone's heart. They fear their own softness, their own longing, their own vulnerability. They fear being abandoned, humiliated, or trapped. So they develop strategies: stay half in, half out, keep options open, stay ambiguous, avoid deep commitment. In this setup, your anxiety is not the threat, it's the glue. As long as you're anxiously attached, they feel in control. They can come close when they want comfort and pull back when they feel overwhelmed. They can say, "Not now. I'm busy." You're overreacting, knowing deep down that you'll still be there tomorrow trying to fix it. The true threat to their psychological system is not your tears, your questions, or your attachment. The true threat is your awakening. The day you stop making their fear your responsibility. The day you stop translating their mixed signals into excuses. The day you stop believing that if you just love them better, they will magically become secure. When you reach that point, your energy shifts. You move from chasing to observing. From "what's wrong with me?" to "does this truly work for me?" You begin to see their behavior not as a judgment of your worth, but as a reflection of their capacity. And when someone who once begged suddenly sees clearly, they become unpredictable. Not in a chaotic way, but in a powerful way. You're no longer controlled by their crumbs. That is exactly what scares them. Because now they don't know what you'll tolerate. They can't assume you'll always stay. They can't rely on your panic to pull you back into the cycle. Your anxiety used to guarantee your loyalty. Your clarity threatens it. You become capable of something they didn't expect. Choosing yourself over the relationship. And for someone who has built their whole emotional strategy around staying one step removed, the idea that you could leave, not in a hysterical outburst, but in a grounded, quiet decision is deeply unsettling. They might call this moment you changing, you becoming cold, or you acting different. They might accuse you of being selfish or uncaring now, but what they're really naming is your power. Your power to say, "I love you, but I will not self-destruct for you. I care, but I won't chase you through your avoidance forever. I wanted us, but I won't sacrifice me." That power means their old tools, silence, distance, mixed signals, half-hearted effort, no longer work on you. You don't rush to resolve their discomfort anymore. You let their silence be their silence. You let their distance be their distance. And in doing so, you hand their fear back to them. On some level, many avoidants know this turning point could come. They sense that one day you might wake up and realize you deserve more. That's why, when they feel you pulling your energy back, they often panic in subtle ways. They might suddenly reappear with a burst of affection, make vague promises, or try to hook you back with just enough attention so the game continues. Not because they've transformed, but because they feel the ground shifting. They fear not the person who cries, calls, and explains, but the person who sees the pattern, heals their own wound, and realizes, "I don't need to live like this." Your true power was never in convincing them to stay. Your true power has always been in knowing that you can leave and still be whole. Walking away is not you turning into the villain. It's not you getting cold, heartless, or vindictive. It's not you giving up too easily or throwing away something special. Walking away is the moment you decide that your heart, your peace, and your sanity are no longer up for negotiation. You need to understand this at a bone, deep level. You are not leaving to hurt them. You are leaving to stop hurting yourself. For so long, every boundary you had was bent, stretched, and rewritten to keep the relationship alive. You made excuses for their distance, their silence, their confusion. You lowered your standards in the name of love. You carried both sides, telling yourself, "If I just try harder, they'll finally meet me halfway." Walking away isn't a punishment. It's recovery. Think of how many times you tried to talk things through. You weren't being dramatic. You were trying to save something important to you. You reached out after arguments. You swallowed your pride first. You forgave behavior that broke your heart, then blamed yourself for not being chill enough. Every time they pulled away, you reassured them. Every time they stonewalled, you apologized. Every time they dismissed your needs, you rephrased them smaller, softer, less inconvenient. You twisted yourself into a version of you that would be easier to love for someone who didn't even fully show up. You weren't trying to control them. You were trying not to lose them. But the price was slowly losing yourself. Protection begins the moment you realize the cost has become too high. Staying is no longer strength. It's self-abandonment. You see that the relationship has become a place where your nervous system is constantly on edge, waiting for the next withdrawal, the next mood shift, the next disappearing act. You are living in a loop, a little closeness, then distance, then anxiety, then chasing, then a few crumbs of reassurance, then distance again. That is not love. That is your body living in survival mode. So when you walk away, you are not choosing to hurt them. You are choosing to stop hurting you. You are choosing to no longer sacrifice your mental health just so someone else can stay emotionally comfortable and unchallenged. People will sometimes tell you, if you really loved them, you'd stay and be patient. But you have been patient. You've given chances long after your heart started bruising. You've listened to their backstory, their trauma, their fears. You've made room for their wounds while yours went unattended. Love is not proven by how much pain you can endure. Love is proven by how much truth you are willing to live in. And the truth is, if someone continuously cannot meet you with basic respect, consistency, and emotional presence, then leaving is not cruelty. It is alignment. You are aligning your life with the reality that you deserve reciprocity, not exhaustion. For the anxious heart, walking away is terrifying because it feels like stepping into the very thing you're most afraid of: abandonment, emptiness, separation. But here's the shift. This time, you are not being abandoned. You are the one choosing. You are not being left in the dark wondering why you weren't enough. You are turning on the light and saying, I am enough, and this dynamic is not. You are not being rejected. You are rejecting a pattern that keeps you in a childlike role of begging for love. That is an act of deep self-protection. It's you becoming the parent your inner child never had, the one who steps in and says, we're not staying where we are, constantly hurt. Notice what happens to your body when you imagine finally stepping back. At first, your chest tightens, your brain screams, what if they change right after I leave? What if I'm making a mistake? What if nobody else loves me like this? But if you breathe past the panic, there's something else underneath. Relief. Relief at the idea of not checking your phone 100 times. Relief at the thought of not decoding every word they say. Relief at not having to hold your breath every time you ask for a little more effort, wondering if this time they'll say you're too much. That relief is your intuition. It's your nervous system recognizing that space from this pattern is medicine, not poison. Does your walking away trigger something in them? Probably. It may force them to feel things they've buried. It may make them uncomfortable, confused, even angry. But their discomfort is not your cruelty. It is the natural consequence of them rarely having to confront the impact of their avoidance. For the first time, you're not rushing in to cushion them from their own behavior. You're not jumping in to fix, explain, soften, or take responsibility. You are allowing reality to land where it belongs, their choices, their feelings, their healing. That is not punishment. That is simply you stepping out of a role you were never meant to play: savior, regulator, emotional crutch. As you walk away, you might still love them. You might always care. But you are making a different kind of promise now. Not, I'll never leave you no matter how you treat me, but I'll never leave myself to keep you comfortable. That is the heartbeat of protection. It is not a door slammed in anger. It is a door closed in wisdom. You are not doing it to make them chase you, regret you, or suffer without you. You are doing it so you can finally sleep, breathe, heal, and rediscover the parts of you that got lost in trying to hold a relationship together on your own. Walking away is not an attack on them. It is a rescue mission for you. There comes a very quiet but powerful moment in your healing when the question in your head changes. For years, your entire nervous system has been wired around, how do I make them stay? How do I fix this? How do I become enough? But the day you start choosing yourself, the question slowly becomes, does this relationship feel safe for me? Does this love honor me? Does my body feel calm here? That is the exact moment you begin shifting from anxious to secure. Not because some magic person came into your life, but because you finally decided that your own emotional safety matters more than chasing someone who can't meet you. Choosing yourself doesn't always look like a dramatic breakup. Sometimes it starts with smaller, quieter decisions. You stop double texting when they ignore you, and instead of spiraling, you sit with your feelings and breathe through them. You feel the urge to over-explain, but you pause and ask, if they wanted to understand, would I really have to work this hard? You feel the panic when they pull away, But instead of immediately chasing, you lean into your own life, your work, your friendships, your passions. These little choices are rewiring your attachment. Every time you choose your peace over their inconsistency, your nervous system learns, I am not going to abandon myself this time. A secure version of you is not a person who never feels anxious. It's a person who knows what to do with that anxiety. In the past, your anxiety pushed you outward. You would rush to fix, call, chase, prove. Now, you start learning how to turn inward first. You put a hand on your heart and say, I know you're scared, but I'm here. We will be okay whether they respond or not. You stop seeing your anxiety as evidence that you are broken and start seeing it as a signal that something in this dynamic doesn't feel safe. Instead of saying, what's wrong with me? You begin to ask, what about this situation is asking me to betray myself? That shift is monumental. It is how you become your own safe base. When you choose yourself, your standards quietly rise. You no longer romanticize, bare minimum, behaviors as something special. A text back is just basic respect, not a reward. Consistency is a requirement, not a prize you have to earn. Emotional availability becomes non-negotiable, not a rare luxury. You start noticing how your body reacts around people. With some, your chest tightens, your stomach turns, you feel like you're constantly auditioning. With others, you feel seen, heard, and strangely calm. The old you chased chemistry that felt like chaos. The emerging secure you starts valuing chemistry that feels like clarity. You also stop needing to prove your worth to anyone who is determined not to see it. Before, if someone pulled away, you would instinctively think, if I become kinder, more patient, more understanding, they'll finally choose me. You would overfunction, overgive, over-apologize. But as you choose yourself, you realize something powerful. The right person for you will not require you to burn out to be loved. The right person will not make you compete with their fear or their ego. The right person will meet you. So instead of molding yourself into whatever shape keeps them around, you show up as you are and you let their response reveal whether they fit your life or not. That is secure energy, not arrogance, just quiet self-respect. Your communication changes too. Anxious communication sounds like begging, defensive explanations, and desperate attempts to not lose someone. Secure communication sounds like honesty with options. This is what I need. This is what I feel. This is what I can't tolerate. I hope we can meet in the middle. But if we can't, I'll have to choose what's healthy for me. There is no threat in that. No game, just clarity. You stop trying to convince them that your needs are reasonable and start living as if they are. And as you do, your world begins to reorganize around that truth. The people who can't handle your boundaries fall away. The people who respect your boundaries draw closer. Something else shifts too, your relationship with silence. When you were anxiously attached, silence was torture. No reply felt like proof that you were unlovable, replaceable, forgotten. Every quiet moment was filled with catastrophic thoughts. But as you grow secure, silence starts to become information instead of condemnation. If they disappear, you don't fill the gap with stories about your worth. You read it for what it is, a lack of effort, a lack of alignment, a lack of capacity. Instead of chasing, you say, thank you for showing me who you are. And you choose not to argue with reality. That is how secure people keep their peace. They don't try to drag someone into loving them correctly. The beautiful thing about choosing yourself is that it doesn't harden you, it softens you in the right places. You don't turn into a cold, detached person who doesn't care anymore. You actually care deeply, but you are no longer willing to love in ways that destroy you. You become more selective with your energy, more honest with your needs, more patient with your healing. You give love, but you also watch how it is received. You still believe in connection, in romance, in deep intimacy, but only where there is mutual effort, mutual safety, mutual respect. And slowly, one day you notice something wild. You're not obsessively wondering where they are or who they're with. You're not constantly rewriting your messages. You're not shaking every time you state a need. You're not terrified that one disagreement will make them leave. You begin to trust that you can handle loss if it comes. You begin to trust that the right people will stay without being begged. You begin to trust yourself. That's what secure really is. Not a perfect person with no triggers, but a person who refuses to lose themselves ever again in the name of love. There is a moment after everything ends that feels like standing in the aftermath of a storm. The relationship has cracked open, the arguments have stopped, the messages have gone silent, and there you are, surrounded by memories, doubts, and a kind of aching quiet you don't know what to do with. At first, it feels like the end of the world. Your body is shaking with withdrawal from the person you were emotionally addicted to. Your mind keeps replaying scenes, wondering what you could have done differently, how you could have saved it, where you failed. Meanwhile, somewhere else, the avoidant is facing a very different kind of silence. For them, this is not just a breakup, it's an emotional reckoning. For you, although it doesn't feel like it yet, this is the beginning of your rebirth. When the relationship collapses, the avoidant no longer has your constant presence to hide behind. Before, they could blame the discomfort they felt on you being too much, too emotional, too demanding. Your anxiety, your questions, your longing took up all the visible space. Now, with you gone or stepping back, there is nothing left to blame. For the first time, they have to sit alone with the echo of their choices. The nights are quieter, but not in a peaceful way. Those moments they shrugged off, the times you cried, the conversations you begged to have, the pleas for clarity they dismissed as drama, start playing back in their mind like a film they can no longer pause. This isn't karma in the petty sense, it's cause and effect. Avoidance is a way of postponing pain. They spend months, sometimes years, dodging depth, dodging accountability, dodging the vulnerability it takes to really show up. But pain is not erased by ignoring it, it's simply delayed. When you finally walk away, when the anxious stops cushioning the impact of reality, all that delayed feeling has nowhere else to go. That is their nightmare. Not your revenge, but their unprocessed emotion catching up with them. A reckoning with the fact that they pushed away someone who was actually willing to do the work, someone who loved them fiercely, someone who kept showing up even when they didn't deserve it. And you, the one who feels shattered right now, you are not being punished by this breakup. Even if it feels that way, you are being stripped of an identity that was never meant to be permanent, the one who has to chase, fix, prove, and earn love. Of course it hurts. You built your world around this person. You made them your emotional home, even when that home had broken windows and doors that only opened one way. When you lose them is like losing oxygen. But slowly, as the days pass, something subtle begins to change. The more distance you get, the more you start to see that you weren't just grieving them. You were grieving the version of yourself you had to become to keep them. In that space, your rebirth begins, not with some grand epiphany, but with small moments of self-return. The first time you laugh and realize it's genuine. The first night you sleep a little deeper. The first day you don't compulsively check your phone. The first time you remember something you love. Music, writing, walking, a hobby, and you give yourself permission to do it without wondering what they'd think. You start claiming back pieces of yourself you had put on hold. You start remembering that your life is not a side story to someone else's emotional unavailability. Rebirth does not mean you stop loving them instantly or that you don't miss them. It means that even while you miss them, you start choosing yourself more. You begin to see the relationship not just through the lens of what you felt, but through the lens of what actually happened. You recall the anxiety, the waiting, the confusion, the constant explanations. You see how many times you overrode your intuition to keep them calm. That at some point, there is a deep exhale where you finally admit to yourself, that was not love that honored me. That was love that exhausted me. That realization doesn't erase the past, but it transforms it. Instead of a story of you not being enough, it becomes a story of you surviving something that was never designed to feed your soul. As you grow from the ashes of this ending, your standards evolve. You stop chasing intensity that comes with instability and start craving peace that comes with honesty. You become more protective of your time and energy. You stop romanticizing emotional starvation as passion. You start understanding that the right person will not make you beg for the bare minimum. This is where your new life takes shape, where you are no longer the anxious one twisting yourself into knots, but a wiser, stronger version of you who knows how to stay with yourself, even when others can't stay with you. So yes, the breakup is their emotional reckoning, whether they show it or not. But more importantly, it is your rebirth. It is the doorway through which you step from a life where you constantly chase people into a life where you attract people who are actually capable of standing still with you, present and open. The version of you that emerges from this won't be the same person who went in. You will be softer in heart, clearer in boundaries, deeper in self-respect. And one day you will look back and realize that losing them was not the end of your story. It was the moment your real story finally had the chance to begin.